Welcome to the Cafe Nightly Show. Today is the 29th of December. It happens to be Friday, and it happens to be the end of the year, at least for as far as most of them are concerned. We're going to be having the 31st is going to be this coming Sunday, which means this is the last you'll hear from me for the year. So Happy New Year to everyone. This is much more subdued than last night. If you have had a chance to see last night, if you have not, last night was very wild. It was something that was a lot of fun. A lot of prizes were given out. It was great to hear from Dirk and Don at the end of the year, but it was actually a lot. When we close in on 4.5 hours and we were still going, we knew that was time to end. But I could definitely put it this way: a lot was covered. There was a lot that was done in the last year in the game of Uplands. A lot to come for this year, so we will go over things a little bit streamlined version of what happened last year. Go over a couple of those recap numbers again put out by Dirk and Don, doing through a very fun quiz show last night. We'll kind of get into some of the bits and pieces there, but go over those numbers, go over some of the major rocks and milestones. What I saw is some of the major rocks and milestones for the year, great things that were done, and of course, what we can look forward to this year, what we hope to have done this year. This is the game of Upland. I've seen a lot of things, iterations. We've seen a ton happen in the last year, but we're looking forward to a ton to be done in the next. So to go over the year again, we'll go over the numbers for the year coming from the team. I've got a few things that I want to highlight on the UGC front. There's a few things I want to highlight on the on the playability, on the operability, on some of the game improvements over the last year. And then we could obviously look at some of the things that need to be done. They need to be done in 2024. And of course, it is the end of the year. Last night was a monster, so it'll be a quick one tonight. But before we get into all that, thank you so much for jumping in. We are recorded obviously in the Plaza, 7 p.m. PT Tuesdays and Fridays. Anything I do say is what I'm saying. Doesn't represent the game of Upland, doesn't represent the team of Upland. Shouldn't be taken as game strategy or financial advice. And the guests or contributors we do have on, same thing. What they say does not represent the game of Upland, team of Upland. Does not represent myself, the Goldsmith, or the Cafe Netley Show. Should be taken as game strategy or financial advice. If we have any questions throughout the show, easiest way, obviously, if you're in the Plaza, feel free to drop it in the Plaza. But of course, you can always send me a DM in the game of Upland to the Goldsmith. You can send me a DM in the game of Upland as well, or Discord, again, the Goldsmith there as well. So let's jump into it. Again, a couple of the big numbers from the year. Luckily they get redropped in this announcement today. They actually were first introduced to us. These numbers were first introduced as a game show last night. So when Dirk and Don came on the UpX podcast, again, they came on as guests 10 p.m. last night, I believe, Eastern time. That's 7 p.m. PT. It was they kind of had come in with third or fourth guest of the night, but definitely a big focal point of the night to be able to have them come on, have them share their thoughts for the year. But they turned the tables, obviously, last night at the UpX podcast. Too Stupid to Win, TML, myself, and More Cheese, all there doing our thing. But got the tables turned on us. Turned things into a quiz show, a little bit of a high stakes quiz show, in that they gave us some decent prizes along the way. But that they did turn the tables and say, what do you know? What do you know about these numbers for the year? And these are the numbers. These are the numbers that really kind of highlight a lot of not only what was done of the year, but also what Upland sees as some of their important rocks of the year. And you could see from what they chose to put up as their rocks of what they chose to put up as their important numbers for the year, what their focus is theoretically moving forward here as well. You got a little bit of a hint because they're selecting certain milestones. There were other milestones that were done throughout the year, but these were some of the important ones they wanted to highlight. 1.5 million NFTs minted. 1.5+ million NFTs were minted this year. 227 million overall transactions on the blockchain. There's lots of different forms of transactions, assets being minted, assets being transacted between two parties, someone purchasing for something from someone else. Sends do count as a transaction as well. 44 million plus sends overall, which surprised me when I saw there was 227 million transactions. I thought more of them were sends than they were. So 44 million sends. There's 300 plus in-game events. That was something that we didn't get into last night, but 300 plus in-game events. 118 speedways were released. 335,000 plus overall train rides. 196,000 plus flights, and 13 million hours of travel in the game of Upland. And that's typically, we're not sitting there waiting for it to happen. That's of those 335,000 train rides and 196,000 flights. That comes with 13 million hours traveled. And I think the number's wrong there. I think that number is minutes, because if it were hours, that would mean that the average train ride and the average flight was over an hour, which I don't think is the case generally. I do think that in trains, people do take hour trains, but I don't think it's people who are taking I don't think the majority of flights are 3 hours long. So again, Upland can correct that if I'm incorrect, but I think that 13 million plus has to be minutes traveled. If 335,000 train rides and 196,000 flights are the correct numbers, if those are not artificially low, then it seems like hours traveled is artificially high. Hopefully, we can get some answers on this. But again, it's a small thing in that it's a stat for the overall year, but it can definitely be said that we are seeing one key stat there. 118 speedways released. One key stat that they left off here, that the X1 left off here from last night, was I think it was just under 250 of the actual approved and brought into the game for in-game assets through UGC. I would have loved to see that number be higher already, but it does kind of tell you something. When we talked about it last night, it was very much a question, or very much an issue of, we would love to see this increased, but this is where we are as of right now. For people who are in the UGC, who know how many assets have been submitted, know the people who've been waiting, it's very much a question of, can we make things better and faster next year in 2024? I think that fits high on the list for a lot of players. I think that fits high on the list for the team. I think that's why we're looking at the first couple of weeks of January, starting January 2nd, possibly running through the entire month of January, because everyone has a different definition of what a few weeks means. We could see it take quite a while for this to get caught up, but we are going to be seeing the launch of a new system, of some type of new system on the UGC front. We know that racetracks, UGC map assets, and UGC structure ornaments are going to be down, or the ability to submit those will be down for a period of at least a few weeks, starting in January 2nd. So we know that to keep our eyes out for those improvements. So I hope that Upland's taking that seriously. I think they are, and looking forward to see what that ends up looking like here moving forward. Upland is looking at putting this out in their announcement. New features and enhancements based on your feedback. Again, that's pretty broad. Don't know exactly what that means. More diverse and engaging in-game events. Again, pretty broad there. Pretty all-encompassing. Continued emphasis on community-driven events. Again, broad again, but keep in mind, community-driven events are things like we saw last night with the UpX podcast year-end extravaganza, like we saw last Sunday for the season's greetings. Those were both done in the Plaza. We had a lot of donations. We had a lot of things given out. We had a lot of fun for people who were participating, people who were there. But it was something that was put on by the community. It wasn't put on by Upland. And ultimately, that is something that Upland wants to see more of. That's why the Plaza has been a focus, for Upland, moving events into the Plaza. That's why we moved out of the previous San Francisco Cafe. And ultimately, that would be, for me, one of the milestones of the year. We'll get into a couple of those milestones, but that cafe, that Plaza, is definitely on that list. And they say and more. Like I said, these coming 2024, if we look at these coming 2024, these are all great broad focuses here, but we don't know exactly what those look like, what those mean. We're looking for more information, and the one piece of more information I know we're going to get is into the first and second week of January. We're supposed to have a quarterly update, a roadmap update. The hope is that when that happens, everyone who can make it makes it. Hopefully, they ask for a call and response period, an opportunity to ask questions. I believe we're going to have that again. We've had that in the past. So keep your eyes open for it, be ready for it, and be ready to respond when that comes up, because ultimately, the better the questions that can be asked, the better the answers that can come back. Questions that aren't asked can't be answered. And in some cases, they won't answer all the questions that get asked. They can't, they won't have time. But again, the better questions that we as a community get out forward, the better questions that theoretically get answered, and the better information we'll have about the upcoming year. Upwind kind of ends this announcement with saying, stay tuned for more updates and get ready for part of the biggest year yet. I think it's definitely possible for Upwind to really have the biggest year it's had as far as player growth, as far as advancements and growth in technology, in availability of assets, in assets minted, in a diversity of layer 2 experiences. I think all of those things are primed to be the case. So to take a look at that and then take a little bit of a rollback this year. Early in the year, we're talking about as we transition over into the year, we got this first idea in the fall and again into the beginning of the year that we were going to have improvements in racing, that we're going to have input of events into racing. We're going to have braking, we're going to have acceleration, and those things definitely happened. They did push forward later in the year. That same track on racing, we saw that we got announcement of carts. We were told that carts were going to be the first UGC cars that were going to be made in the game of Upland, that the first time we're going to get cars made by players, it was going to actually be carts, a different classification of vehicles, that they all have the same stats, all carts having the same stats, just different skinning, looking different. But that's what players would have the ability to do, to reskin those vehicles, not to play around with stats so much, but to reskin those vehicles and have those out. That was something we were talking about in May into June. We had people actually, starting to apply for those shops pretty early on. Racetracks were applied for in February into March, and then we did have the first racetracks come into the game, player-driven racetracks coming in June, July. So we definitely did see that on the racing front. We had a couple different pieces of evolution coming in the game, and ultimately what we have as of right now, when we talk about the 118 speedways that have been released so far, that all ties into the UGC side of things. The fact that 100 of those, over 100 of those racetracks were designed by players, were put in the game by players, and the majority of those, again, 100 of those are actually meta ventures. People are able to take a profit off what is happening in those racetracks. Theoretically, more monetization models should come and will come on those racetracks, but right now, a share of staked races, when people do staked races on the racetrack, is going to the meta venture owner, going to the racetrack owner. So we're looking forward to continuing to see that be a part of the game of Upland, with the vehicles having come through with racing this year. A big part of this year as well has been a partnership that ties into the racing, ties into cars, with Stock Car Pro from Brazil. Stock Car Pro with Brazilian Stock Car Pro has brought a few things in. We do have a new asset set, including legits. But the big part of that asset set is the Stock Car Pro series cars. Those have more race-driven stats. Those are going to be things that are going to potentially tie into a direct race series exclusive to those cars. Upland addressed that in 2023, that the race series would not be out fully, but that in 2024, a race series that would be exclusive to those cars would be something that people could look forward to. So I'm looking forward to that potentially coming up in the next year. And then, of course, to cap this year off, we did have the racetracks get announced. We did have people apply for the racetracks in the spring. We did have them get kicked off in early summer. We did have people apply in late summer, midsummer, for the manufacturing of carts. We did have the first UGC car actually drop just a little over a week ago. That was a big deal here. I think that's the big full circle here of starting to bring more UGC into the racing side of things. Now that we finally have more user input on the racing, we have braking, we have lane changing, we have acceleration, all of those things playing a big part, a big role in who wins and who doesn't win a race. Now we actually have a little bit of a racing ecosystem starting to get built. There's a lot of promises on the table for racing. We know that we were talking about damage coming to cars. We were talking about spark energizing cars, kind of making that full loop, full circle of an economy around racing, around driving of cars. But I don't think we're there yet. That is something that hasn't even been discussed yet in the last couple weeks or couple months. Knowing that in January that might be on the list, and that's definitely a question I'd love to ask myself as we get into the roadmap 2024, Q1, Q2. Where do cars lie? Is Spark coming? Is cars as transportation coming on the map? Are we going to be able to start seeing damage to cars? And if so, what does that look like? Are we going to get our secondary layer of economy where we're going to have shops to fix cars, shops to modify cars? We'll have to see how that all rolls out. But that would be the closed loop here. That would be the next part of things that are really going to build this auto economy that we're still waiting for more details on, and have been for over a year now. Other big arc here for the year has been MetaVentures. On the side of MetaVentures, obviously the expansion of MetaVentures from Block Explorers into FIFA World Cup, really pushing these football shops, these football fan shops, putting a lot of activity through the football fan shops. When we had the women's World Cup this summer, we really saw that resurgence in that, specifically in the FIFA football, the football fan shops that we hadn't seen since the FIFA men's last year. We really took that one event to really push things through and to encourage those sales there. We also saw expansion specifically in types of MetaVentures as well. We saw new forms of MetaVentures come in the Variety Legit shops. Having a Variety Legit shop in finally gave an opportunity for a couple classes of legits that hadn't been exchangeable or hadn't been saleable in shop yet to get moved into saleable shop. The big one there is passes. Passes being saleable in the Variety Legit shop allowed people to exchange passes before they were redeemable for things like a concert series release, or theoretically we'll see how that concert series releases happen in the future. But Louisa Posey legit or the legit memento, that was what kind of the first evolution here of having those passes be redeemable. People could buy and sell the passes before they were redeemed. Obviously, once they're redeemed, now they're memento. Seeing that it changes asset class depending on who owns it and when it was redeemed, and it being able to be exchanged or sold in a different MetaVenture depending on what classification is at, if it's been redeemed for hasn't yet. So that was kind of an evolution expansion in our MetaVenture side. We've also had the true UGC, the approvals process, the assets being put through the map assets, the expansion of what was available for map asset shops. That's all happening this year. We barely at the end of last year, we got the map asset shops opened up from the original 10 people who had put in to be able to do outdoor decor. Again, outdoor decor evolving into map assets expanding into a larger set of shops being open. Then we saw that we had the ornaments this spring into summer. Structure, ornament, manufacturing, and shops opened up, meaning that we now have the ability for UGC assets, UGC ornaments to be put out, as opposed to having to buy them from the team. So that was kind of a big expansion of the economy, a big expansion of the UGC economy. And on that side of the UGC economy, really kind of full circling, mentioned the cart finally coming to the game, but the real side of that UGC economy kind of coming around is at the very end of this year, less than a month ago, we got the announcement that ornaments are now open up for year-round use. The structural ornaments being up around for year-round use gives more utility for them. It gives people a better opportunity to sell structural ornaments. If they were to put out a seasonal structural ornament for Halloween or for the holiday season, the Wonderland season, people could have that up year-round, which means they're more likely to purchase them as opposed to only being able to have them up a month a year. We're waiting to see how this affects the economy as far as expansion and the amount of UPX that ends up going into the structural ornament side of things, how much the sales side of the structural ornaments picks up. But it definitely did increase the utility and increase the use case, the reason why people might want to buy and hold an ornament. So looking forward to seeing that as that evolves. Again, I think Upland created a little bit of an issue with structural ornaments and made them a difficult thing for people to really have UGC for if they were selling them to people for a 1 month use at a time. It makes the secondary market a little soft because people are trying to sell an asset that is not directly or does not directly have utility. It has deferred utility until the next season. It makes it so that when people go to buy the structural ornament, their appraisal of its value is probably lower because they only see, a month a year utility. Being able to see the decorations year round, I think is going to, again, increase how people value structural ornaments or what they're willing to pay for a structural ornament, as well as increasing that secondary value, after the first purchaser has purchased it, they're deciding to expand and get different designs. They choose to sell that to somebody else who may not have had an opportunity to purchase it in the first place, or who just didn't choose to purchase it because they didn't have that structure size yet. They didn't have the apartment building built yet. Now they're trying to get a zombie hand, a zombie rising hand by Dejak. They're trying to pick one up on the secondary market. And that's going to have more utility because I can put it up year round and leave it up year round, even though the incentive, the prize winning, the ability to be part of a competition, that's typically within the season or would be within the season here moving forward. A couple other big things, big rocks of the year, other than the cars, other than the UGC, it really does have to be totems. That's something that is coming from the Upland side. We were told about them in the lead up to Genesis Week. We were told what they were and how they were going to function, how they were going to usher in life. Ultimately, the year 2023 has nothing to do with life in the game of Upland as far as I'm concerned. That's just because totems are meant to be this preliminary, this step to get closer to life. We didn't see totems become life this year. I expect and hope that we're going to see totems usher in life in the 2024 year here, and hopefully very shortly getting in that Protom totem cycle with the totems. That hasn't kicked off yet. We know that we're going to enter Q1 2024 in the next couple days, so we're likely going to see that Protom totem cycle take hold, take place sometime Q1. Hopefully, fingers crossed. That's just wishful thinking. Q1 2024, with the understanding that if you hold totems now, you're kind of on a time clock. You don't know when that Protom drop is going to be announced. When the Protom drop is announced, you don't know how that's going to affect that economy. But ultimately, we are headed that way, one way or the other. It is a ticking clock, even though we don't know the exact moment that's going to happen. I do want to put that emphasis on totems in that two things happened with them. It was a strong flip for a lot of people. It was a strong profit center for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are willing to pay more in UPX than the mint price in UPX. It was also something that was a strong sale for Upland. Upland sold out on both the USD and the UPX side of totems. Every totem they produced, they were able to sell. So that is it is a success story for sale as far as that's concerned, but the utility really is what is going to play into, was it a good deal to the people who bought them on the primary, bought them on the secondary. The people who sold them on the secondary, it seems like a good deal because they got a pretty strong profit, maybe one of the stronger profits they've gotten in Upland in a long time. Buying in UPX at 55,000 UPX, turning around and selling at maybe 100, 150,000 UPX, depending on what people ended up getting, luck of the draw, in totems, but we still have to see the utility of the Protom totem cycle, how people can use those totems to build that Protom pile, that Protom that's going to become stem, that stem that's going to become integral in the life cycle in Upland. That's what's really going to tell the holders, the people who are holding totems now, that they made a good decision to hold out, and it's ultimately going to be its own game loop. It's ultimately going to be something for people to spend time and enjoy, knowing that Protom and totem interaction. It's going to be like having your Tamagotchi with a real reward in the back end. You do your Tamagotchi, you keep that bad boy alive, you take care of it when you're supposed to, and you're actually going to have a digital asset on the backside, or you're going to have a digital token of sorts on the backside in STEM. So looking forward to seeing that cycle come through. Again, that's an unfulfilled cycle as of right now, but looking forward to 2024, hopefully ushering that in. Otherwise, other big evolutions here in the game of Upland. A couple of the other big changes that we've had this year. Treasure hunting has been significantly changed. We saw 3 or 4 different evolutions of the changes in hunting. We have seen competitive go from being something that was a very easy way for people to come in, learn a little bit of treasure hunting, have some rules that they knew to follow, and just farm spark. That decision, or a couple decisions that made it more difficult. There was limitations on the number of hunts you could do at a certain price point. So this escalating price model that was included. The rotations of what the hunt cities were, the competitive hunt cities, that had changed. Some of the payouts had changed as far as the hits on some of the more rare chests for what people were seeing, and it just ultimately continuing to make it harder to hunt, or making it so that it wasn't as easy as a profit center for a lot of people or some people. That included the change of removing treasure hunting from the PC, moving it only to phone, to the app. And the one other big one that was earlier in the year, it was about June, I believe, removing the arrows, or changing the arrows from being the having the red arrows as early as you did, so that people ended up having a couple classification zeros, not knowing they were as close to as a treasure as they would otherwise know, making it more difficult, requiring more cents per treasure claim. And Obi-Wan, yes, totems are huge. We will see what happens with them. I am continuing to stack my totems. I'm looking forward to the Protom drop, but that ultimately is something we don't know the date of, and we're just going to keep looking out for it. And then other major advancements in the year, or changes in the year. Obviously, one of the big changes in the year, whether or not it had put out a lot of interest for people, but one of the big changes for the year for a lot of people was adding or changing how things were done for NFLPA. That was changed to a bundle sale. They actually have had pretty good success on sales on the UPX side of things on the bundle sale. Bundle sale, again, randomizing what is available to people, randomizing what they get for what they pay, and kind of factoring in or rolling in the rarity of certain players or the value of certain players into that pack value. So we don't have people paying a high amount for a starter or for a superstar, and a lower amount for a regular chain move type player. Very much something that is more in line with some of the areas of Upland that had been more successful with these pack sales. And again, it definitely did push more on the UPX side of things. The other big change there on the NFLPA was the USD and UPX side, that you were able to buy a lot of packs in USD. They reserved a lot of those bundles for USD. We saw the USD and bundle play itself out in a bunch of other places. The USD and UPX sales play themselves out in a couple different ways. Obviously, they were involved in totems. Obviously, they were involved in FIFA, that both the USD and the UPX existed, and side by side. It's just a model that Upland is going to continue to follow. We think they do, but that was something that they did evolve this year. Was more and more of these USD based sales. a couple sales that were exclusive in USD as well. And then one other thing here on the front of new partnerships along the way. The first partnership that was brought in through Layer 2 or through a group of uplanders going out and contacting a a partner, a potential partner, and bringing that partner in, holding their hand, helping them get established in Upland, but ultimately Uplanders doing that as opposed to Upland, was Kaboom, which is an organization, a nonprofit that builds playgrounds in needed areas and areas that need playgrounds throughout the country. And that was the first instance of players in the game of Upland getting a real world partner, bringing that real world partner into the game, doing a lot of the administration so that that partner doesn't have to learn or build their knowledge in Upland prior to that integration, but instead that they're able to, either profit, or in this case, have that profit, have some profit from the sale, but also, if they want to have the name recognition, if they have a social cause that they're trying to put out in the public in a larger way, it gives their opportunity to have that larger reach into the metaverse. So that was pretty exciting to see that first instance happen. And we'll look forward to those type of opportunities continuing to exist for players to get in touch with real world businesses and help bring them into the metaverse. The other big news of the year obviously has to be UDN and Layer 2 becoming a bigger focus. There are a number of UDNs or number of Layer 2 developers that actually did have the opportunity to finally get things opened up for dev shops. We saw 2 Layer 2 games not only start getting pushed in dev shops, but also have Upland do a couple integrated contests with them. Upland Kingdoms did one integrated contest with an asset being distributed by Upland, and Uplandia obviously with 2 now, and looks like they're going to continue with every city release potentially. There's a fingers crossed there. Every city release having some form of integration, having some benefit of activity in that city release, tying into a third-party game, and that third-party game potentially giving you an asset inside of Upland. So if that continues to be the case, I'm looking forward to it. More power to it. And with the end of the year here, on the 14th of December, we did close this mini games contest that Upland had put out. It's a prize, essentially reward for putting the mini game into the game of Upland, getting it established, pulling it in, doing everything you need to do. There, I think it was between 6 and 8 had actually gone through, successfully done everything they need to do for Upland to bring them in the game to earn 1 million UPIX along the way. So we're looking forward to that in Q1 2024. Actually seeing these mini games come in live. Since there's 6 to 8, none of them have launched yet. It looks like none of them have their big full grand opening yet. So excited to see those actually come into the game and have those grand openings pushed through Upland, them explaining and them celebrating those as they come into the game. Seeing those integrations with staked play, play to earn, the real play to earn aspect, and then one that was outside that contest that actually did have a launch and did have a strong play to earn tie that has come in. As far as I've seen, it's the one that has had the most individual, staked play to competition with. Finally, something Upland has teased for a long time, but finally a mechanism of tournament, of paying into a tournament, placing in that tournament, getting a percentage of the overall pay, and that would be Plamo X. Again, finally this proof of concept, finally a game that does something that Upland's been talking about for 10 months this year or since early spring, which was having this tournament structure, this bracket structure, or some form of people could pay to get into a grouping, to get into a tournament, to potentially win a prize pool. And again, the first tournament in that sense in the Layer 2 game is happening right now. It's 1,000 UPIX was a buy-in every cycle, every entry, with a amount of work that is done to earn whatever point structure, if you earn your points along the way, and then those points being compared, again, entirely skill based, those points are earning your place on the leaderboard, and that leaderboard determining who gets what prizes depending on how many people participate. So again, I would love to see this continue to grow in the year of 2024. It was something that was in 2023 teased and pushed along the way that it was coming as something that could be used, as a tool that could be used by third-party developers. Now that we finally have something that's being done like that, we're just looking for the next version, the next version, the next version, and the continued cascade. And again, to those who do it first, congratulations. It requires someone putting in the extra effort for these things to come through first. But the first is also the opportunity for us to have more here moving forward into 2024. Otherwise, what I personally had looked back on for the year, one of the big milestones for myself, Genesis Week 2023 was a huge opportunity for players to get to meet other players. What Upland did this year in highlighting meta ventures or organizations or layer twos with having a little bit of a booth space, an opportunity for people to share their projects and uplanders to also see those projects, see what projects are out there. I think it was a huge evolution in this concept of a marketplace or an open economy or a space inside of Upland, both tangible in the real world, but also obviously, in the metaverse in Upland, where there is some interaction, operability, interaction, and some form of ability to access that information. So it was pretty cool to see it happen and pretty cool to see it in live space. Being able to have, panels built into Genesis Week 2023, obviously the Genesis Week teasing things that are coming for the rest of the year. That's something to be expected, but looking forward to that opportunity for more and more meta ventures to establish themselves in Upland, for them to be a huge part or a growing part of Genesis Week every year. And it's kind of where the energy and excitement for the rest of the year comes from, at least for me, seeing what is being promised, hoping that, we get good execution, and then seeing what happens along the way. And, having seen some of those early iterations of, we're going to be doing this, and this in racing, and then actually seeing this, and this happen in racing. It was things that were put out there early on, that ended up having utilization of being really realized later in the year. So excited to see it. Hoping for more of it into 2024. And last thing that I really saw and really want to highlight happening over the last year, happening in 2023, was just the overall thing of the cafes. Kind of on the list here a little bit of Upland had promised cafes. Upland's been promising cafes as player-run cafes for a long time. We got a couple glimpses of this partnership with Nowhere. We got to see at Genesis Week John from Nowhere, John Morrow, talk about the project, talk about what was coming next. We eventually had cafes come in, the Upland run cafes in a few different cities. We saw those same iterations of cafes be used to host different events throughout the year. The Brazilian Fashion Week was one of them. We had the Doge event. That was another one that spawned a new cafe as well. And Upland also just started to push this programming that broadcasters would be programming in these cafes, that broadcasters would be programming eventually in this plaza, which we are now, and continuing to see this evolve. I would have hoped that over a few months we could get closer to players having cafes, but I think that's going to be a 2024 rock. That's going to be something that we're going to see Upland turn back around and start working towards players getting cafes. At Genesis Week 2023, we had the first token or coin or a medallion that promised that you were going to eventually get a cafe being given out to a player. My thought was that would mean that the player-driven cafes would be sooner rather than later. But seeing the Plaza last night during the UpX podcast, hosting 75 people with decent fidelity, with those people being able to watch streaming video, with things working pretty well, that is kind of the promise that had been worked on since June. It's iteration after iteration after iteration, things getting better. Continue to run into problems with the number of people in the room, with the fidelity of video, with the ease of use, and seeing those things get improved along the way. Finally, seeing a version of the Plaza that again can host 75 people at the same time, that can all be watching the same video without major issues. Um, Seeing people who are after number 75 get kicked out and being told that they can't get in, unfortunately. But seeing that work properly as opposed to people getting booted while in the room a ton. That is the evolution. That is something that I think Upland need to see potentially before they push player-driven cafes. Fingers crossed. That's something we see early to mid part of 2024. We don't have to wait till 2025 for. And then otherwise, just the idea of the looking forward with optimism. I think that UGC this year was a lot of struggle, was a lot of people waiting for applied or applications for models that have been correctly submitted, waiting for them to be approved. A lot of focus in this fall has been how do we improve that process on the Upland side. It looks like they have some plans in place. So that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to, the potential of seeing that promise, see that get improved. The cafes, obviously, seen the improvement so far, but there's more that needs to come before it gets player driven. So we do want to see that happen. Partnerships, I think, there was this question about, do we want to see more and more partnerships? I think people want to see the utilities in the game continue to get improved. The things that are supposed to work. City releases getting more streamlined and work more easily, and have more excitement around city releases. I think on the point of city releases, I think they really did get, the idea of them working properly, the idea of people not being kicked out, people not having different experiences from others. That has been significantly improved this year. The other thing that got significantly improved with city releases is Upland with Miami. They tried something different. They built a lot of contests around Miami. They now have minting badges based on how quickly you mint, based on the size of the properties you mint, based on the number of properties you mint, and giving those badges out to people based on that minting experience, kind of building more excitement around the minting structure, the minting period. So more power to Upland on that. I think that was a great idea. I think that was a great implementation of a contest around minting to help encourage more minting. So I'm looking forward to seeing that happen, seeing that be more integrated here into the next several city releases. And then, ultimately other things that I'm looking forward to is, just getting those things finally integrated, which are these game loops. We talked about mini games coming to the game of Upland. There's 6 to 8 that are coming that are going to be improved. That are coming right off. That are waiting for the integration to get pushed through. So that's exciting that we have that backlog, but we want to see more come in. We want to see the process of getting those type of layer 2 and games tied in games getting integrated into the game and making sure those happen faster. Giving that a larger degree of effort, a larger degree of focus here into the next several months. So I'm looking forward to that, and fingers crossed that's exactly what we're going to see. We did see this idea of pushing more and more AI in the end of the year started to get pushed through. I know that's the way the whole market's going. I kind of still look at the people who took the effort and learned Blender and pushed a lot of extra effort into getting those skills. I look at them in very high regard. I did not build my skills in Blender that much. I learned a little bit, so I know what other people are doing, but I don't have those skills as of others. So I really held those people in high regard. I was excited about what they were doing. Higher integrations of people using AI-driven tools to build their assets. I don't know if that's the direction that I want to see things go, but it seems to be the way that's going to happen in Upland. The tools making things more accessible to a larger variety of people. I get the point of that. I get that's a choice. So looking forward to those who want to participate, those who haven't invested as much time into the skills, who want to have an easier method into putting assets into the game of Upland, you will have that ability here. It looks like in the next several months, Upland's going to be working on integrating some of those things. Maybe several years. It might not be immediate, but that is one of the things that did kind of come out of last night. So keep your eyes out for that. I'm still gonna maybe put more time into Blender before everything's done. Maybe continue to give it a little bit of love. Continue to focus on the people who are putting the effort in Blender, but knowing that there may be some other AI-driven tools that'll be coming out in the not so distant future. Other than that, for me, I'm ultimately looking at a year of innovation, hopefully new things coming along the way. But the one thing that has made the year of 2023 as enjoyable as it's been for me and for many people is the community and the people who are in it. The community that's putting out UGC, the community that is putting out broadcasting and events and ultimately sharing time and experience with others. The fact that we can do this more readily because communication came in the fall of 2022, 2023, building upon that idea of in-game communication, the way players can reach players, moving into cafes where people could go in and experience open conversation with players that are staying around them with a 3D avatar. This idea that we can continue to build on this space of the game of Upland being more than just a property trading game with blue squares on a map where a metaverse can evolve and places for players to have peer-to-peer conversations. I'm excited about that. And I think that it's been a little bit of a success, but it's been a lot of growing pains to get from one iteration to the next. There's been roadblocks that had to be overcome. And finally, we're moving in that right direction. So I'm looking forward to that this year as well. And I'm just looking forward to a game that continues to evolve. Things that have been difficult in the past, hopefully getting a little bit better here, but ultimately that real connection, that real tie, that real building of players coming in, building the UGC, players coming in, building the layer 2 experiences, games inside of Upland, just a place that holds everything together, just enough glue to hold together all these experiences in geolocated space, in a visual graphical way, but a place with an economy that ties all of these events together. So if that's what we continue to get out of this year, I think Upland is a place I'm looking forward to for 2024. I think it's gonna be a bright future if that's what the core of Upland is holding together all these other projects. For this year, it's been a great one. I've put out 200 episodes this year. I've talked to a lot of people, had a number of interviews, had interviews with people on the staff of Upland, had a couple of chances to get in and talk to a couple of the founders, as well as players along the way, with a number of interviews with things as they came through, as we had new layers of UGC, as we had new layers of layer 2 gamification in the game, and I'm looking forward to more of the future. So thank you so much, everyone, for the year. Looking forward to next year. And of course, have a safe and happy new year.